The Chicago wind cut through my threadbare coat like knives as I hurried down the sidewalk, Lily's small hand tucked firmly in mine. March had arrived with bitter cold and empty promises, much like everything else in my life lately. "Hurry, baby," I signed with my free hand, though Lily couldn't see the gesture while we walked. My 8-year-old sister's dark curls whipped around her face as she struggled to keep pace with my longer strides. I slowed immediately, guilt twisting in my stomach. She'd already been through so much today. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The appointment with the audiologist had delivered news I'd been dreading. Lily's hearing loss was progressing faster than expected. Without the specialized hearing aids and speech therapy we couldn't afford, she'd lose what little hearing remained within a year. The cost? $43,000. Might as well have been $43 million. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The third call from an unknown number today. I ignored it, just as I'd ignored the previous two. Bill collectors had stopped expecting answers months ago, but they kept trying anyway. "Maya." Lily tugged my hand, then signed when I looked down. "Hungry." My heart clenched. Of course she was hungry. Breakfast had been cereal with water instead of milk because I'd used our last dollars for bus fare to the medical appointment. Lunch had been skipped entirely. "I know, sweetheart." I signed back, forcing a smile. "Just a little longer. I have my shift at Giordano's tonight, and Maria always lets me bring home leftover bread." Lily's face fell slightly, but she nodded with the heartbreaking resilience of a child who'd learned too young that life wasn't fair. At 8 years old, she already understood sacrifice in ways no child should. We lived in a studio apartment in Pilsen, the kind of place where the radiator clanked all night but produced minimal heat, where the locks were flimsy, and where I wedged a chair under the doorknob every night for extra security. But it was ours. Or rather, it would be ours for another 2 weeks if I could somehow scrape together $800 for rent. The elevated train rumbled overhead as we passed beneath it, the sound making Lily flinch despite her hearing loss. She'd always been sensitive to vibrations, feeling sounds through her bones that most people only heard. I squeezed her hand reassuringly. My shift at Giordano's started in 20 minutes. Just enough time to drop Lily with Mrs. Chen in apartment 2C, our elderly neighbor who watched her in exchange for help with grocery shopping and cleaning. It wasn't ideal, Mrs. Chen was 76 and half blind, but it was all I could afford. And she was kind. In our world, kindness counted for more than credentials. "Stay close," I signed as we approached our building. The neighborhood had been getting worse lately. More dealers on corners, more hollow-eyed people in doorways, more police sirens cutting through the night. Last week, someone had broken into the building and stolen copper piping from the basement. Our landlord, predictably, had done nothing. Inside our apartment, I quickly changed into my work, uniform black pants, and a white button-down shirt that I'd ironed that morning, the only professional clothing I owned. Lily sat on our second-hand couch, swinging her legs and watching me with those enormous brown eyes that saw far too much. "Be good for Mrs. Chen," I signed, kneeling before her. "I'll be home by 11. We'll read 3 chapters tonight, okay?" Her face lit up. Books were Lily's escape. Even though reading was harder for her than for hearing children, we'd spent years building her vocabulary, making up for what she couldn't learn through overheard conversations. She was brilliant, my sister. She deserved so much more than I could give her. I kissed her forehead, breathing in the strawberry scent of the dollar store shampoo I'd used to wash her hair that morning. "I love you to the moon," I signed. "And to the stars," she signed back, "our nightly ritual, and to the planets beyond." "Mrs." Chen answered her door after the third knock, her wrinkled face breaking into a warm smile when she saw Lily. "My little flower," she said in heavily accented English, knowing Lily could read lips if she spoke slowly. "I made dumplings." Relief flooded through me. At least Lily would have a proper meal tonight. "Thank you," I said, emotion thickening my voice. "I'll pick her up after my shift." "No rush, no rush." "Mrs." Chen waved dismissively, already ushering Lily inside. "We watch her favorite cartoon, the one with the signing puppy." I made it to the bus stop with 3 minutes to spare, my breath forming clouds in the cold air. The bus was late, as always. By the time I rushed through the back entrance of Giordano's, I was 12 minutes late from my shift. Torres. Marco, the floor manager, appeared immediately, his florid face twisted with irritation. This is the third time this month. I'm sorry, I said quickly, tying my apron. The bus was, I don't want excuses. I want reliability. His eyes traveled over me with the kind of assessment that made my skin crawl. Marco had been making increasingly inappropriate comments lately, his accidental touches becoming more frequent. You're lucky I'm in a good mood tonight. We have important guests. Private dining room. You're serving them. My stomach sank. Private dining room meant wealthy clients, which usually meant good tips but also meant higher expectations and zero tolerance for mistakes. Of course. Thank you for the opportunity. Marco's hand landed on my lower back, fingers spreading possessively. Maybe after your shift, we can discuss your continued employment over drinks. Just you and me. I stepped away smoothly, pretending to reach for my order pad. I have to get home to my sister. That deaf kid? Marco's expression soured. You baby her too much. She'll never learn independence. Rage flared hot in my chest. But I swallowed it down. I needed this job. Needed the $200 a week it brought in. Needed the leftover food I could take home. Needed the health insurance I'd qualified for after working here 9 months, even though it barely covered anything. I should get started, I said instead, forcing professionalism into my tone. Where's the private room? Upstairs. The Venezia room. Marco's eyes narrowed. And Torres? Smile more. These guests appreciate pretty waitresses who know how to be accommodating. The Venezia room was Giordano's most exclusive space, reserved for celebrities, politicians, and the kind of wealthy businessmen who didn't want their meetings observed by the general public. I'd only served there twice before, both times for birthday parties of families with more money than sense. Tonight felt different. I climbed the narrow back stairs, balancing a tray of water glasses and fresh bread. Voices filtered through the heavy wooden door mail, speaking in low tones that suggested serious business rather than celebration. I knocked twice, waited for the gruff, "Come in," and pushed the door open. 6 men sat around the table. 5 of them looked like typical wealthy businessmen, expensive suits, polished shoes, the confidence that came with never having worried about rent or food. The 6th man sat at the head of the table, and the moment my eyes landed on him, every instinct in my body screamed danger. He was probably in his mid-30s, with black hair styled with casual precision and features that would have been classically handsome, if not for the hardness in his dark eyes. His suit probably cost more than I made in a year, tailored perfectly to broad shoulders and a lean frame. But it wasn't his appearance that set off. Alarms, it was his presence. He commanded the room with the kind of authority that didn't need to be announced. Every other man at the table deferred to him with subtle body language. The way they angled toward him, the way they waited for him to speak first, the way their conversations paused when he shifted in his chair. "Good evening, gentlemen," I said, slipping into my professional voice. "I'm Maya, and I'll be serving you tonight. Can I start you off with drinks?" The man at the head of the table looked up, and our eyes met. For a moment, something flickered in his expression, surprise maybe, or recognition, though I was certain we'd never met. I would have remembered. "McAllen, 25, he said, his voice a deep rumble with the barest hint of an accent I couldn't place. "Neat." The others ordered quickly expensive whiskeys, craft cocktails, 1 bottle of wine that cost more than my monthly rent. I memorized the orders without writing them down, a skill I'd perfected over years of waitressing. As I worked, I felt his eyes on me. Not in the way Marco looked at me, with barely disguised lust and entitlement. This was different. Assessing. Curious. Intense enough to raise goosebumps on my arms despite the room's warmth. I delivered drinks efficiently, took food orders, and tried to ignore the weight of his attention. The conversation at the table resumed something about shipping contracts and territorial agreements that I didn't fully understand but knew enough to recognize as the kind of business that wasn't entirely legal. "The Rossetti family won't back down without incentive," one of the men said, his voice carrying just enough for me to overhear as I refilled water glasses. "They've been pushing into Bridgeport for months." "Let them push," the dangerous man replied calmly. "We'll push back harder when the time is right. Patience, gentlemen. Aggression without strategy is just violence." Something about his tone made it clear he knew plenty about both. I retreated quickly once their meals were served. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. grateful to escape the tension-thick atmosphere of that room, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the man at the head of the table had somehow seen more than just a waitress. Had seen me exhausted, desperate, barely holding things together, and filed that information away for reasons I couldn't begin to guess. The rest of my shift passed in the usual blur of orders and complaints, sore feet and forced smiles. By the time I clocked out at 10:45, I was exhausted in the bone-deep way that came from running on empty for too long. Marco cornered me by the back door as I was leaving, his breath sour with the whiskey he'd been drinking in his office. "About that drink," he said, blocking my path. "Another time," I replied, trying to step around him. His hand shot out, gripping my arm hard enough to hurt. "I'm getting tired of your excuses, Torres. You want to keep this job, you need to show some appreciation." Fear and anger warred in my chest. I jerked my arm free, adrenaline sharpening my voice. "Don't touch me." "Or what?" Marco stepped closer, using his size to intimidate. "You'll quit? Go ahead. See how easy it is to find another job that'll hire someone with no references and a disabled kid to support." The words hit their target, fear shooting through my defiance. He was right. I was barely scraping by as it was. Without this job, "I need to pick up my sister," I said, forcing my voice steady. "We can discuss my employment tomorrow." Something ugly crossed Marco's face, but before he could respond, the back door swung open. Cold air rushed in, along with the last person I expected to see in the grimy alley behind Giordano's. The dangerous man from the private dining room stood in the doorway, his dark eyes taking in the scene with predatory focus. Marco's proximity to me, my defensive posture, the tension crackling in the air. "Problem?" he asked, the single word carrying more threat than Marco's entire tirade. Marco released me immediately, stepping back with the survival instinct of a lesser predator recognizing an alpha. "No problem. Just discussing schedules with my employee." It looked like harassment. The dangerous man's voice remained calm, almost pleasant, which somehow made it more terrifying. I'd hate to think Giordano's tolerates that kind of management style. "I was just leaving," I said quickly, not wanting to be caught in whatever power dynamic was playing out. I ducked past both men, hurrying into the alley. "Miss," the dangerous man called after me, but I didn't stop. I practically ran the 3 blocks to the bus stop, heart pounding for reasons I couldn't fully articulate. Something about that man, about the way he'd looked at me in the restaurant and again in that alley, had set off every warning bell in my system. The bus ride back to Pilsen felt longer than usual, my exhaustion weighing heavy on my shoulders. I collected Lily from Mrs. Chen's apartment. My sister was already half asleep, curled up on the elderly woman's couch with a worn blanket tucked around her. "Thank you," I whispered to Mrs. Chen, pressing $20 into her hand despite knowing I couldn't afford it. She'd fed Lily dinner, given her somewhere safe and warm to be. That was worth more than money could measure. "She's a good girl," Mrs. Chen said, patting my hand. "You're a good sister. Things will get better, you'll see." I wanted to believe her. Carrying Lily up the 3 flights to our apartment, I felt every one of my 26 years multiplied by 10. Inside, I locked the door, wedged the chair under the knob, and tucked Lily into the bed we shared. "Love you," I signed, though she was already asleep. I stood at our single window, looking out at the Chicago skyline, those glittering towers where people lived in warmth and security, where $43,000 was pocket change, where children didn't go to bed hungry or lose their hearing because their guardians couldn't afford medical care. Somewhere in one of those towers, the dangerous man from the restaurant was probably sleeping in luxury, unaware of and unconcerned with people like me. His world and mine occupied the same city but might as well have been on different planets. I had no way of knowing then how wrong I was, that our worlds were about to collide in ways that would change everything, that the man I'd fled from in that alley would become the most important and dangerous person in my life, that tomorrow, everything would begin. The next morning started with a crisis. I woke to Lily shaking my shoulder, her face pale with fear. She was signing frantically, man outside, watching, scared. My heart lurched. I rushed to the window, carefully peering around the edge of the curtain. Sure enough, a man in a dark jacket stood across the street, leaning against a car, his eyes fixed on our building. My blood ran cold. I recognized that jacket, that stance. Derek, my ex-boyfriend, if you could even call him that after only 3 months of dating that had ended 8 months ago, had been escalating lately. First, it was texts I'd blocked. Then calls from different numbers. Last week, he'd shown up at Lily's school, claiming to be her uncle, only leaving when the principal threatened to call the police. Derek was dangerous. Not in the calculated, controlled way the restaurant man had been dangerous. Derek was volatile, unpredictable, fueled by a toxic combination of entitlement and rage that I'd been too naive to recognize when we'd first met. "It's okay," I signed to Lily, pulling her away from the window despite my racing heart. "We're safe inside." But I didn't believe it. Our flimsy locks wouldn't stop someone determined to get in. I'd been meaning to get a restraining order, but that required money I didn't have for filing fees, and time I couldn't spare for court appearances. I got Lily ready for school with forced cheerfulness, packing the peanut butter sandwich that would be her lunch, making sure her homework was in her backpack, all while my mind raced through options I didn't have. The bus stop was 2 blocks away. If Derek followed us, "We're going on an adventure," I signed to Lily. "Different route today." We left through the building's back entrance, cutting through an alley that smelled of garbage and desperation. I kept glancing over my shoulder, Lily's hand gripped tight in mine. We made it to her school without incident, but my relief was short-lived. As I signed her in with the office, another deaf student's mother had started a petition for better accommodations that the school was ignoring. I saw Derek's car cruise slowly past the playground. He was hunting us. My day shift at my second job data entry at a medical billing company passed in a fog of anxiety. I made mistakes on 3 accounts, earning a warning from my supervisor. I couldn't concentrate, couldn't stop checking my phone, couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was building. At 3 o'clock, I left work early, losing 2 hours of pay I desperately needed, to pick up Lily from school myself instead of letting her take the school bus to Mrs. Chen's. I found my sister exactly where I'd left her, safe in her after-school program, playing with building blocks with another deaf student. "Change of plans," I signed. "We're going on another adventure." Lily's brow furrowed. She could sense my fear despite my attempts to hide it, but she nodded and gathered her things. We were halfway to the bus stop when I saw Derek's car turn onto the street behind us. My breath caught. I pulled Lily faster, but she couldn't keep up, stumbling on the uneven sidewalk. "Maya!" Derek's voice carried across the street. He'd gotten out of his car, leaving it running in the middle of traffic. "We need to talk." "Stay away from us," I called back, positioning myself between him and Lily. "I just want to talk to you, baby." He crossed the street with long strides, his expression twisted with the rage he could never quite hide. "Why are you avoiding me? After everything I did for you?" Everything he did for me. The memory of that flooded back, the way he'd offered to help with bills, then held it over my head. The way he'd isolated me from the few friends I had. The way his temper had shown itself in increasingly frightening ways until the night he'd grabbed my throat and I'd realized I was looking at my future grave if I didn't get out. "I don't want to talk to you," I said firmly. Behind me, Lily pressed against my legs, trembling. "Leave us alone, or I'm calling the police." "The police?" Derek laughed, the sound harsh and bitter. "Go ahead. Tell them what? That your ex-boyfriend wants to have a conversation? They'll laugh you out of the station." He was getting closer now, close enough that I could smell the alcohol on. His breath, despite it being barely 3 in the afternoon. "You think you can just throw away what we had?" His voice rose, drawing attention from passing pedestrians who quickly looked away. Nobody wanted to get involved. "You think you're too good for me now? You're nothing, Maya. A waitress with a deaf kid you can't afford to take care of. I was the best thing that ever happened to you." My hands curled into fists. Every protective instinct I had was screaming, but I was trapped. If I ran, he'd follow. If I fought, Lily would see violence. If I called the police, Derek was right. They'd do nothing until he actually hurt us. "Derek, you need to leave. Now." I pulled out my phone, hoping the threat would be enough. Instead, he lunged forward, grabbing my wrist hard enough to make me drop the phone. "Don't you dare. Hey!" The shout came from behind me. I twisted around to see a man approaching, fast, tall, well-dressed, with 2 other men flanking him. My stomach dropped. It was him, the dangerous man from the restaurant, and I had no idea if I'd just been saved or if things had gotten infinitely worse. The dangerous man from the restaurant moved with a predator's grace, closing the distance between us in seconds. Up close, in daylight, He was even more imposing, at least 6'3", with the kind of build that suggested he knew exactly how to use violence when necessary. Derek's grip on my wrist loosened slightly as he registered the threat approaching. "This doesn't concern you," he said, puffing up his chest in the foolish way men do when they're trying to hide fear with bravado. "You're bothering the lady." The dangerous man's voice was calm, almost pleasant. "That makes it my concern," I said. Derek started, but he didn't get to finish. One of the flanking men, built like a tank with a scar running down his left cheek, stepped forward. He didn't touch Derek, didn't threaten him verbally. He simply stood there, radiating menace, and Derek's bravado crumbled like wet paper. "We were just talking," Derek said, releasing my wrist entirely. "Couple's argument. Nothing to do with you. We're not a couple," I said firmly, rubbing my wrist where his fingers had dug in. Behind me, Lily was still pressed against my legs, and I could feel her small body trembling. The dangerous man's eyes flicked to my wrist, to the red marks already forming, and something dark flickered across his expression. "You have 3 seconds to get in your car and drive away," he said to Derek, his voice dropping to a register that made my spine straighten instinctively. "If I see you near her or the child again, we'll have a different conversation, one you won't enjoy." Derek looked between the 3 men, his face flushing with humiliation and rage. For a terrible moment, I thought he might do something stupid. Then survival instinct kicked in, and he backed away, pointing at me. "This isn't over, Maya. You hear me? This isn't—" "2 seconds," the dangerous man said. Derek practically ran to his car, peeling away from the curb with a squeal of tires. The tension in the air dissipated, but only slightly. I was acutely aware that I'd traded one threat for another Derek I knew. These men I didn't. I turned to face my unexpected savior, pulling Lily closer to me protectively. "Thank you, but we're fine now." His dark eyes moved from me to Lily, something softening in his expression as he took in her tear-streaked face and the way she clung to me. "You're not fine," he said simply. "That man will come back." "I can handle it," I lied. "Can you?" He stepped closer, and I fought the urge to back away. "He's been watching your building, following you to work, waiting outside the child's school." My blood ran cold. "How do you know that?" "Because after last night, I had someone look into you. Maya Torres, 26, waitress at Giordano's and data entry clerk at Midwest Medical Billing, guardian to Lily. Torres, age 8, deaf, student at Hancock Elementary." He rattled off the facts of my life like they were items on a grocery list. Ex-boyfriend Derek Mahoney, 3 DUIs, 2 assault charges that were dropped, restraining order violations in 2 previous relationships. The invasion of my privacy should have made me angry. Instead, I felt a different kind of fear, the kind that came from being seen, from having someone powerful take an interest in your insignificant life. "Who are you?" I demanded, even though part of me didn't want to know the answer. "Dante Romano." He extended his hand as if we were meeting at a cocktail party rather than on a street corner after he'd just chased off my abusive ex. "And you and your sister are going to get in my car now?" "Absolutely not," I said, pulling Lily behind me more fully. "I don't know you, and I don't get in cars with strange men. Smart policy." His mouth curved slightly, something that might have been approval. "But that man knows where you live, where you work, where your sister goes to school. He's escalating. The next time you see him, I might not be there to intervene." "I'll call the police." "The police will do nothing," Dante interrupted. "You know that. Derek Mahoney's uncle is a sergeant at the 18th District. Any reports you file will disappear. Any restraining orders will be delayed in processing. You're alone in this, Miss Torres. Except now you're not." Lily tugged on my sleeve. Her small face turned up to mine, signing rapidly. "Is he safe? Who is he? I'm scared." I knelt down to her level, blocking her view of the men, and signed back. "I'm trying to figure that out, baby. But I won't let anyone hurt you. I promise." When I stood, Dante was watching the exchange with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "She's deaf," he said, statement, not question. "Yes," I lifted my chin defensively. "And brilliant and brave and everything good in this world." "I don't doubt it." "I don't doubt it." He glanced at the man with the scar, who pulled out a phone and stepped away, speaking in low tones. "The child is frightened. Let me get you both somewhere safe, while my people ensure Derek Mahoney understands that pursuing you further would be extremely unwise for his health." Your people, I repeated. What are you, some kind of... I stopped, the pieces suddenly clicking into place. The restaurant meeting about territories and families. The way Marco had backed down instantly in the alley. The casual mention of having people look into my life. You're with the mob. Mafia, Dante corrected mildly. Mob is such an ugly word. And yes. My instinct was to grab Lily and run. But where would we go? Back to our apartment that Derek knew how to find. To Mrs. Chen's, putting that sweet old woman in danger. To the police who wouldn't help. Why? The question burst from me. Why do you care what happens to us? You don't know us. Something shifted in Dante's expression. A crack in his controlled facade. Last night, at the restaurant, you served us for 3 hours. Do you know what I noticed? I shook my head, confused by the change in direction. You didn't eat, he said. Not once. Not even the bread that was sitting out for staff. And when one of my associates spilled his drink, and you cleaned it up, I saw your hands. They're not the hands of someone who eats regularly. They're the hands of someone who's been going hungry. Heat flooded my cheeks at having been seen so clearly, at having my desperate circumstances laid bare. And then, Dante continued, his voice gentling slightly, when you thought no one was watching, you wrapped 3 pieces of bread in a napkin and put them in your apron pocket. For her, I assume. He nodded toward Lily. Everything you do is for her. Every sacrifice, every indignity you endure at work, every meal you skip. You're raising her alone, and you're drowning, and you're too proud to ask for help. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. That doesn't explain why you care. No, he agreed. It doesn't. But perhaps we can discuss my motivations somewhere other than a street corner where your ex-boyfriend might circle back. As if summoned by his words, a black SUV pulled up to the curb, sleek and expensive and so out of place in this neighborhood that it might as well have had danger written on its side. The scarred man opened the back door, waiting. I looked at Lily, at the trust in her eyes despite her fear, at the red marks on my wrist from Derek's grip, at the impossible situation we were trapped in. 20 minutes. I said finally, my voice steady despite my hammering heart. We'll go somewhere public. You'll explain what you want from us, and then we go home. Agreed, Dante said, though something in his eyes suggested he had no intention of letting us go home to that unsafe apartment ever again. I picked up my phone from where I dropped it, checked that it still worked, and took Lily's hand. We're going to ride in this car for a little bit, I signed to her. The man says he wants to help us. I don't know if I trust him yet, but I'm going to be with you the whole time. You and me, remember? You and me, Lily signed back, her favorite phrase. Always. Getting into that SUV felt like stepping off a cliff into darkness, with no idea if there would be ground to catch me or just an endless fall. Lily climbed in first, and I slid in beside her, keeping her away from Dante, who sat across from us in the spacious back seat. The scarred man got in the front passenger seat, and the driver, an older man with gray at his temples and intelligent eyes, pulled smoothly into traffic. Where are we going? I asked, my arm around Lily protectively. The Peninsula Hotel, Dante replied. They have an excellent afternoon tea service. The child should eat something. We can't afford my treat, he interrupted. Consider it payment for excellent service last night. I opened my mouth to argue, but Lily's stomach chose that moment to growl audibly. She looked up at me with those enormous brown eyes, and my resolve crumbled. When was the last time I'd been able to take her somewhere nice? To let her be a child instead of just another mouth I was failing to feed. Fine, I said, but just tea. Then we talk. The Peninsula was the kind of place I'd only seen in magazines, soaring ceilings, marble floors, the kind of quiet that came from wealth so established it didn't need to announce itself. We must have looked absurdly out of place, Lily in her worn school uniform and me in my secondhand clothes. But if the staff noticed, they were too well trained to show it. Dante led us to a private table in the corner of the restaurant, positioned so he could see all the exits, a habit I recognized from my brief, terrible time with Derek. Though Dante's awareness was professional rather than paranoid, a waiter appeared instantly, and Dante ordered without looking at a menu, the full tea service for the table, and warm milk with honey for the young lady. She's lactose intolerant, I said quickly, the words automatic after years of managing Lily's dietary needs. Almond milk, then. Dante amended without missing a beat. With honey. The waiter nodded and disappeared. You can order for yourself, I said, an edge to my voice. But I order for my sister. Noted. Dante leaned back in his chair, studying me with that unsettling intensity. You're protective of her. She's everything to me, I said simply. I saw that last night. The way you wrapped up that bread, the way you move through your day like a woman on a mission. But you're exhausted, Miss Torres. You're working yourself into an early grave, and it's still not enough. The truth of it hit too close to home. We manage. You survive, he corrected. Barely. The audiologist yesterday, the appointment cost $200 you didn't have. You paid with a credit card that's already maxed out, knowing you can't make the minimum payment next month. I stared at him, feeling stripped bare. Stop. Stop investigating me. Stop watching me. Stop. I can't, Dante said simply. Not anymore. Why? I demanded again, more forcefully. Why us? What do you want? Before he could answer, the waiter returned with tiered trays of small sandwiches, scones, pastries, and a beautiful pot of tea. Lily's eyes widened at the spread, and despite my anger and fear, my heart swelled at her obvious delight. Eat, I signed to her. Whatever you want. She didn't need to be told twice, reaching for a sandwich with careful hands. Dante waited until she was occupied before answering my question. I want to help you. Nobody helps for free, I said bitterly. What's your price? My price. He considered this, sipping his tea thoughtfully. I want you to accept protection from Derek and anyone else who might threaten you or your sister. I want you to move into a secure apartment. I own several buildings throughout the city. I want you to let me handle the medical expenses for Lily's hearing aids and therapy. I laughed, the sound harsh in the elegant room. And in exchange? In exchange, you continue your life. Work your jobs, care for your sister, exist without constantly looking over your shoulder. That's it? Skepticism dripped from every word. You're going to spend thousands of dollars on us out of the goodness of your heart? A mafia boss has decided to become a charity? Not charity, Dante said, something flickering in his dark eyes. Investment. In what? In you. He leaned forward slightly. Last night, I watched you navigate a room full of dangerous men with grace and intelligence. You assessed threats, adjusted your behavior accordingly, and maintained your dignity while being harassed by your manager. You're smart, resourceful, and fiercely protective of what's yours. Those are qualities I value. So this is what? Some kind of job offer? Eventually, perhaps. For now, it's simply an offer of protection and resources. You're drowning, Miss Torres, and I'm throwing you a life preserver. Whether you grab it is your choice. I looked at Lily, happily eating a scone with jam, for once not worried about where her next meal would come from or whether we'd have heat tonight. I thought about Derek's escalating violence, about the $43,000 I'd never have, about the constant grinding anxiety that had become the soundtrack of my life. What's the catch? I asked quietly. Because there's always a catch. Dante was silent for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried a weight I didn't fully understand. The catch is that once I start protecting you, I don't stop. Once you're under my care, you're mine to protect. That's not a burden I take lightly, and it's not one I relinquish easily. Yours to protect. The words sent a shiver down my spine. That sounds a lot like ownership. It's not, he said firmly. You're free to leave whenever you choose, but while you're under my protection, you follow my rules regarding your safety. No more walking alone at night. No more living in an apartment with faulty locks. No more skipping meals so your sister can eat. Those aren't rules, I said. They're care. Yes. Something softened in his expression. They are. Lily tugged on my sleeve, and I looked down to see her signing a question. Is he going to help us? Can we trust him? I didn't know how to answer. Everything logical said to run, that accepting help from a man like Dante Romano was accepting a different kind of cage. But everything desperate in me, everything exhausted and afraid and tired of being strong, wanted to say yes. I need time to think, I told Dante. You have until we finish tea, he replied. After that, I'm taking you and Lily to see the apartment I have available. You'll make your decision with full information. It wasn't really a choice, and we both knew it. But he was giving me the illusion of one, which was more than most people in his position would offer. We finished tea in relative silence, Lily eating until she was full for the first time in weeks, while I turned over every angle of Dante's offer in my mind, searching for the trap I knew had to be there. The apartment was in Gold Coast, one of Chicago's wealthiest neighborhoods. The building had a doorman, security cameras, and the kind of lobby that belonged in a luxury hotel. The apartment itself was on the 10th floor, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen with appliances that actually worked, and windows that overlooked Lake Michigan. It was beautiful. It was safe. It was everything I'd dreamed of providing for Lily. The building has excellent security, Dante explained as we toured the space. No one gets past the lobby without clearance. The doors have reinforced locks, and there's a panic button in each, a room that connects directly to my security team. Your security team, I repeated, always watching. Keeping you safe, he clarified. Lily had discovered the second bedroom and was bouncing on the bed, signing excitedly about having her own room. The joy on her face was almost painful to witness. I can't afford this, I said quietly. Even if you're covering the rent now. What happens when your interest in our situation fades? We'll be right back where we started, only now we'll be used to security we can't maintain. Dante moved to stand beside me at the window, both of us watching Lily's happiness. My interest won't fade, he said, voice low enough that only I could hear. I don't know how to explain this in a way you'll believe, but the moment I saw you wrapping up that bread for your sister, something shifted in me. I've spent my entire life in a world of violence and betrayal, of people who only show loyalty when it benefits them. And then there you were, this woman who's been beaten down by life but still puts her sister's needs before her own, who walks through fear every day but doesn't break, who serves men like me with dignity while working herself to death for a child who isn't even yours. She is mine, I said fiercely. In every way that matters. I know. He turned to face me fully. Your parents died when you were 18. You had a full scholarship to Northwestern, a future full of possibilities, and you gave it all up to become Lily's guardian instead of letting her go into the foster system. You've been sacrificing for her ever since. Tears I'd been holding back for weeks, months, years, finally spilled over. How do you know all this? I told you. I had you investigated. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and gently wiped a tear from my cheek with his thumb. And everything I learned made me more certain that you and Lily deserve better than what life has given you. Let me provide that. Not because I expect something in return, but because I can, and because you deserve it. I don't understand you, I whispered. You're a criminal. You hurt people. Why would you care about us? I don't understand it either, he admitted. But I do. And I promise you. Maya, may I call you Maya? I nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. I promise you, Maya, that while you're under my protection, no one will harm you or Lily. Not Derek. Not anyone. You'll have resources to care for her properly. You'll be able to sleep at night without worrying about rent or food or safety. All I ask is that you trust me enough to accept what I'm offering. Lily appeared in the doorway, signing excitedly. Can we live here, please? It's so big, and I'd have my own room, and you wouldn't have to sleep on the couch anymore. The last detail broke me. Lily thought I slept on the couch by choice, not because I'd given her the only bed and made up stories about preferring the couch so she wouldn't feel guilty. I looked at Dante, at this dangerous man who saw too much and offered too much and terrified me in ways that had nothing to do with his profession and everything to do with the way he looked at me like I mattered. Okay, I said, the word barely audible. We'll accept your help, but I have conditions. Name them. I keep my jobs, I said firmly. Both of them. I won't be kept like some dependent charity case. Agreed. Though I'd like to discuss Marco's harassment at Giordano's. I need transparency about what you expect from us. If this arrangement comes with strings, I need to know what they are up front. Fair enough. Dante's expression was serious. I expect you to accept security measures. I expect you to inform me or my people of any threats. I expect you to let me help Lily get the medical care she needs. Beyond that, you live your life as you choose. And when you get bored of playing protector, I challenged, when the novelty wears off, it won't, he said with absolute certainty. I don't know how to make you believe that yet, but I will. You have my word, Maya. I don't give my word lightly. Lily was watching us, picking up on the seriousness of the conversation even if she couldn't hear it. I knelt down to her level and signed. How would you feel about living here? The man, his name is Dante, is offering to help us. Is he nice? Lily signed back. I looked up at Dante, at this complicated, dangerous man, who had somehow decided we were worth protecting. I think so, I signed. I think he might be very nice, in his own way. Lily considered this with the gravity of an 8-year-old making a life decision. Then she nodded firmly and signed. If he helps you not be so tired, then yes. My heart broke and mended simultaneously. I'd been working so hard to hide my exhaustion from her, but children always knew. Then we'll stay, I said to Dante, standing. But I'm warning you now, if you hurt her, if you use her to hurt me, I will find a way to make you regret it. I don't care how powerful you are. Instead of being offended, Dante smiled a real smile that transformed his severe features into something almost warm. There's the fire I saw in you, he said with approval. Good. You'll need that fierceness in my world. And Maya? Yes? I would never hurt a child. Never. Whatever sins I've committed, that line I do not cross. I nodded, something in his tone making me believe him. Now, Dante said, pulling out his phone. Let's discuss logistics. I'll have your belongings moved from your current apartment today. A woman named Maria will help you get settled here. She's trustworthy, good with children, and she's been with my family for years. Tomorrow, I'll arrange for Lily to see the audiologist again, this time at a facility that specializes in pediatric cases. I started to protest the cost. You can, and you will, he interrupted gently. That's the agreement, remember? You accept help. This is more than help, I said. This is everything. Yes, Dante agreed, his dark eyes holding mine. It is. Over the next hours, my life transformed with a speed that left me dizzy. Maria arrived, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She took charge of Lily with the ease of someone who'd raised children of her own, immediately engaging her in sign language that surprised me. I have a nephew who's deaf, Maria explained in Spanish-accented English. I learned ASL years ago. Your sister, she's very bright. While Maria helped Lily explore her new bedroom and start unpacking the bags someone had already retrieved from our old apartment, Dante pulled me aside. There's one more thing we need to address, he said. Derek Mahoney. My stomach clenched. What about him? He's a threat that needs to be neutralized. Not permanently, he added quickly, seeing my expression, but effectively. I'm having papers drawn up for a restraining order that will actually be enforced. Additionally, my people are visiting Derek tonight to explain, in terms he'll understand, that pursuing you further would be extremely detrimental to his health. You're going to threaten him? I'm going to educate him, Dante corrected. There's a difference. By tomorrow morning, Derek Mahoney will understand that you and Lily are under the protection of the Romano family. He'll also understand that any attempt to contact you will be met with immediate and severe consequences. I should have been horrified by the implied violence. Instead, I felt a rush of relief so profound it made my knees weak. For the first time in months, I wouldn't have to look over my shoulder constantly, wouldn't have to fear for Lily's safety, wouldn't have to calculate escape routes and defensive strategies. Thank you, I said quietly. Dante's expression softened. You don't need to thank me for basic protection, Maya. That's what I do for people who are mine. That word, again mine, it should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like a shelter from a storm I'd been weathering alone for too long. I should get dinner started, Maria called from the kitchen. Miss Maya, what does Lily like to eat? The normalcy of the question, the assumption that we would stay for dinner, that this was now our home. It overwhelmed me in ways that danger never had. I excused myself to the bathroom, locking the door and sinking onto the closed toilet seat, trying to process everything that had happened in the space of a few hours. This morning, I'd been barely holding my life together. Now, I was living in a luxury apartment under the protection of a Mafia boss who looked at me like I was something precious, worth protecting. It was too much, too fast, too good to be real. A soft knock on the door. Maya? Dante's voice, concerned. Are you all right? I wiped my eyes, took a deep breath, and opened the door. He stood there, this powerful man, looking at me with genuine worry. I'm scared, I admitted. This is too much. You're too much. I don't know how to do this. How to accept this much help without losing myself in it. Then don't, he said simply. Accept what you need. Keep who you are. I don't want to change you, Maya. That fierce, protective woman who yelled at a stranger to stay away from her sister, that's who I'm protecting. I don't want some grateful, subservient version of you. I want the real you, fire and all. Why? I asked again, needing to understand. Dante was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried a vulnerability I hadn't expected. Because when I watched you last night, wrapping up that bread with hands that were shaking from exhaustion, I saw something I thought didn't exist in my world anymore. Selfless love. The kind that asks for nothing in return. The kind that would sacrifice everything for someone else's well-being. He paused, his eyes meeting mine. My mother was like that. Before she died, before my father's violence killed her spirit long before it killed her body, she would have done anything for me and my brothers. And I swore that if I ever had power, I would use it to protect women like her, women like you. The confession hung between us, explaining so much. This wasn't about attraction or ownership or any of the dark motives I'd feared. This was about a man trying to save echoes of someone he'd lost. I'm not your mother, I said gently. I know, but you're someone who deserves to be protected, and I have the means to do it. So let me. From the kitchen, I heard Lily's laughter, a sound I hadn't heard in weeks, the sound of a child who felt safe. Okay, I said again, this time with more certainty. But Dante, I need you to understand something. I'm not just accepting your protection for me. I'm accepting it for Lily. She's my priority, always. If there ever comes a time when being in your orbit puts her in danger, then you leave immediately. He finished. I would never ask you to choose between her safety and my pride. Never. I nodded, some of the tension in my chest easing. Now, Dante said, his tone lightening slightly. Maria makes the best arroz con pollo in Chicago, and she'll be offended if we don't eat enough to prove we appreciate it. Think you can handle that? Despite everything, I smiled. I think I can manage. Dinner was surreal, sitting at a table that wasn't wobbly, eating food that we hadn't had to carefully portion, watching Lily sign animatedly with Maria about her school and her favorite books. Dante asked Lily questions about her classes, her friends, her interests, engaging with her as a person rather than treating her disability as her defining characteristic. She likes mysteries, I translated when Lily signed about her favorite type of book, especially ones where kids solve crimes. Smart girl, Dante said, speaking directly to Lily even though he didn't sign. She could read lips well enough to follow along. I have a friend who owns a bookstore. I'll arrange for her to set aside the new releases in that genre. Lily's face lit up, and she signed rapidly to me. She says thank you, I translated, and that you're the nicest, dangerous man she's ever met. Dante laughed, the sound genuine and surprised. Dangerous man? I flushed. She's perceptive. She knows you're not. Ordinary. True, he agreed. But for her, I'll only ever be the man who makes sure she's safe and has good books to read. That's a promise. After dinner, while Maria helped Lily get ready for bed in her new room, Dante and I stood on the apartment's small balcony, looking out at the city lights reflected on Lake Michigan. This is probably a bad time to ask, I said. But what exactly do you do? In your business? Dante was quiet for a moment. I control various operations throughout Chicago. Some legitimate construction companies, restaurants, import-export businesses. Some less legitimate. I maintain order, resolve disputes, ensure that my people are protected and prosperous. I don't deal drugs, I don't traffic people, and I don't harm civilians. But I won't lie to you and pretend I'm a good man, Maya. The world I inhabit requires violence sometimes. It requires me to make difficult choices that you might find morally compromising. Will I be pulled into that world? Not if I can help it, he said. You'll exist on the periphery, safe, protected, but separate from the darker elements. There may be times when you attend events with me, meet associates, but never will you be asked to participate in anything illegal or dangerous. I nodded, appreciating his honesty even as it confirmed my fears about the kind of man he was. I should go, Dante said, checking his watch. Let you and Lily settle in. Maria will stay tonight, help you get oriented. I'll return tomorrow to take Lily to her appointment. You don't have to. I want to, he interrupted. If that's acceptable to you. I thought about Derek. about doing everything alone for so long, about how terrifying and wonderful it was to have someone share the burden. "It's acceptable," I said quietly. At the door, Dante paused. "Maya, thank you." "For what?" "For trusting me. I know that didn't come easily." He reached out, his hand hovering near my cheek before dropping back to his side, as if he'd thought better of the gesture. "Sleep well. You're safe here." After he left, I checked on Lily, finding her already asleep in her new bed, Maria sitting in a chair nearby with a book, ready to stay through the night. "You don't have to watch her," I said. "I'll be right next door." "Mr. Romano asked me to stay," Maria said gently. "So you could sleep without worry. You look like you haven't had a full night's rest in years, mihija." Tears threatened again at the kindness. "Thank you." In my own bedroom, with a door that closed and a bed with clean sheets and pillows that didn't smell musty, I lay down fully clothed, too wired to even change. The ceiling was unmarked by water stains. The walls were thick enough that I couldn't hear neighbors fighting. Through the window, I could see stars that the city lights usually obscured. For the first time in years, I let myself cry not from fear or exhaustion or desperation, but from relief so profound it felt like grief for all the versions of myself who'd had to be strong when I wanted to break. I cried for the 18-year-old who'd given up her future, for the 23-year-old who'd realized Derek was dangerous too late, for the 26-year-old who'd been skipping meals and weathering harassment because she had no other options. And then, finally, I let myself feel something dangerous. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, Dante Romano was exactly what he claimed to be, a man who wanted to protect us. Hope that this wasn't a trap or a manipulation, but a genuine offer of safety. Hope that the fierce, protective woman who'd yelled at a stranger to stay away from her sister had somehow, impossibly, found an ally in the last person she'd expected. Outside, Chicago glittered with possibility. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, the future didn't look like an endless struggle. It looked like it might be something more. 3 months had passed since that day when Dante Romano walked into my life and refused to walk back out. 3 months that had fundamentally altered everything I knew about safety, about trust, about the complicated nature of men who lived in shadows, but somehow illuminated the darkest corners of my world. The morning started like most others now, with Lily bouncing into my room at 7 a.m., her new hearing aids already in place, signing excitedly about the field trip her class was taking to the Museum of Science and Industry. "Did you pack your lunch?" I signed back, stretching in the comfortable bed that still felt too luxurious to be real. "Maria made me a sandwich with the good turkey," Lily signed, her face glowing with health that 3 months of proper nutrition and medical care had restored. "And she put in those cookies I like." Maria had become a fixture in our lives, part housekeeper, part grandmother figure, part guardian angel. She arrived each morning at 6:30, helped get Lily ready for school, and stayed until I returned from my evening shift at Giordano's. Though lately, I'd been seriously considering Dante's suggestion to quit the restaurant entirely. "Your manager continues to make you uncomfortable." He'd said last week over dinner, another new routine, Dante joining us 3 or 4 times a week for meals. "And you don't need the income anymore. Why stay?" "Because it's mine," I'd replied. "My job, my choice, my independence." He'd nodded, understanding without agreeing, and hadn't pushed further. That was Dante's way. He had opinions, strong ones, but he'd learned to let me make my own decisions, mostly. I got dressed for my morning shift at the medical billing company, another job I'd kept despite Dante's offers to support us fully. The data entry was mind-numbing, but it was legitimate work that had nothing to do with the Romano family or their business interests. It kept me grounded, reminded me that I was still Maya Torres, not just a woman under Dante's protection. My phone buzzed with a text. "Car is downstairs. Marco will drive you." I smiled despite myself. Dante had insisted on providing transportation to and from work, one of the few security measures I'd stopped fighting. Marco, the scarred man from that first day, had proven to be surprisingly gentle beneath his intimidating exterior, especially with Lily. The ride to work was uneventful, Marco making small talk about the weather and asking after Lily's progress with her hearing aids. At the office, I settled into my cubicle and lost myself in the rhythm of invoices and insurance, codes, but my mind kept drifting to tonight. Dante had invited me to a charity gala, not asked, invited, making it clear I could refuse if I wanted. "It's for children's hospitals," he'd explained. I'm a major donor, and it would be nice to have you there, if you're comfortable. I'd said yes, though the idea of entering Dante's world so publicly made my stomach twist with nerves. For 3 months, I'd existed on the periphery of his life, safe in the apartment he provided, grateful for his protection, but largely separate from the criminal empire he controlled. Tonight would be different. Tonight, I'd be visible as someone important to Dante Romano, and in his world, visibility came with consequences. My phone rang mid-afternoon, Dante's name on the screen. Is everything okay? I answered immediately, my first thought always Lily's safety. Everything's fine, his deep voice assured me. I'm calling because there's been a development. Derek Mahoney was arrested this morning. My breath caught. For what? Violation of the restraining order, attempted breaking and entering at your old apartment building, and assault on a police officer when they tried to detain him. Dante's tone was matter of fact. He's looking at significant jail time. Relief flooded through me, followed quickly by suspicion. Did I engineer his arrest? Dante finished. Only in the sense that I ensured the police were watching him closely enough to catch him in the act of his own stupidity. Derek made the choices that led to his arrest. I simply made sure those choices had consequences. Thank you, I said quietly. You don't need to thank me, Maya, but I wanted you to know you're safe from him now. Truly safe. After we hung up, I sat in my cubicle, processing this new reality. Derek was gone. The threat that had haunted me for months was neutralized, not by my own actions but by Dante's intervention. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt complicated gratitude mixed with unease at how easily Dante could manipulate circumstances, even supposedly legitimate ones like police arrests. At 6 p.m., Marco picked me up from work and drove me home. Maria had already left for the day, and Lily was doing homework at the kitchen table, her tongue poking out in concentration as she worked through math problems. How was your day? I signed after kissing the top of her head. Good, she signed back. We learned about dinosaurs. Did you know some of them were as big as buildings? I did know that, I signed, smiling at her enthusiasm. Are you excited for your field trip tomorrow? So excited. Her hands moved rapidly. Maya, can Dante come too? As a chaperone? Please? My heart stuttered. Sweetheart, I'm sure Dante is very busy. Actually, a deep voice said from behind me, and I spun to find Dante leaning against the doorframe, looking unfairly handsome in a dark suit. I've already cleared my schedule, Mrs. Patterson called me this afternoon to ask if I'd be willing to chaperone. I said yes, if it was acceptable to you both. Lily squealed, an actual sound of delight that her hearing aids amplified, and launched herself at Dante, who caught her easily, lifting her up as she wrapped her arms around his neck. The sight of them together still made my chest tight. Over the past 3 months, Dante had become a constant presence in Lily's life, taking her to appointments, attending her school events, teaching her chess, and listening with genuine interest to her excited chatter about books and dinosaurs and everything else that fascinated her 8-year-old mind. He treated her like she was precious, like she mattered, like her deafness was just one small part of who she was, rather than a burden or a tragedy. You're really coming tomorrow? Lily signed when Dante set her down. I really am, he confirmed, signing along with his words, another thing he'd done, learning ASL so he could communicate directly with her. And I've arranged a special surprise for after the museum. What surprise? Lily signed, bouncing on her toes. If I told you, it wouldn't be a surprise, Dante replied, his eyes crinkling with amusement. You'll have to wait and see. Lily pouted dramatically but accepted this, returning to her homework with renewed energy. Dante turned his attention to me, his expression softening in the way it only did when we were alone or with Lily. You look tired. Long day, I admitted. But I heard about Derek. Thank you. We can discuss that later, he said, glancing at Lily. After she's asleep. For now, I believe we have a gala to prepare for. About that, I started, but he held up a hand. Maria left a dress in your room. If you don't like it, we'll find something else. But I thought. He hesitated, something almost boyish in his uncertainty. I thought the color would suit you. In my bedroom, I found a gown that made me gasp. Emerald, green silk, floor length, with delicate beading along the bodice. It was elegant, without being ostentatious. sophisticated without being matronly. It was perfect. The price tag was still attached. My eyes widened at the number. "Dante," I called, emerging from the bedroom. "This is too much." "It's a dress," he said simply. "And you'll need it for tonight and future events. Consider it a work uniform if that makes it easier to accept." "Work uniform," I repeated. "For what work exactly?" Something flickered in his eyes. "We should discuss that too. Later. For now, get ready. We need to leave in an hour." An hour later, I stood before the mirror, barely recognizing myself. The dress fit perfectly, hugging curves I'd forgotten I had. Maria had returned to help with hair and makeup, transforming me into someone who looked like she belonged in Dante's world. Lily sat on my bed, watching with wide eyes. "You look like a princess," she signed. "I feel like an imposter." I signed back. "Honestly." "You look perfect," Dante said from the doorway, his eyes darkening as they traveled over me. "Absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect." The gala was held at the Drake Hotel, a historic landmark on Chicago's lakefront. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and was filled with the city's elite politicians, business moguls, old money families, and, I realized with growing awareness, more than a few people who were likely part of Dante's less legitimate world. Dante kept me close, his hand resting possessively at the small of my back as he guided me through introductions. "Maya Torres," he introduced me repeatedly, "a very important person in my life. Not his girlfriend, not his companion. Something more significant, the way he said it, though I couldn't quite define what." Dante, a silver-haired woman in diamonds, approached, her smile sharp and assessing. "How lovely to see you. And who is this beautiful young woman?" "Catherine." Dante greeted her with cool politeness. "This is Maya, Catherine Lansing, one of the hospital board members." "Charmed," Catherine said, though her eyes were calculating as they swept over me. "Dante's never brought a date to these events before. You must be very special." "She is," Dante confirmed, his tone making it clear the topic wasn't open for discussion. As the evening progressed, I began to notice patterns. The way certain men approached Dante with obvious deference. The way conversations would stop abruptly when we neared certain groups. The way his security, was positioned throughout the ballroom, watching, assessing, protecting. This wasn't just a charity gala. It was a display of power, of alliances, of Dante's position in Chicago's complicated hierarchy. And I was being presented as, what? A weakness? An asset? A statement? "You're tense," Dante murmured during a break between conversations. "Are you uncomfortable?" "I'm trying to understand my role here," I said quietly. "What I represent by being at your side." His expression grew serious. "You represent what's important to me. That's all anyone needs to know." "But what does that make me in their eyes?" I pressed. "A target?" "No." His hand tightened at my waist. "It makes you untouchable. Everyone in this room now knows that you're under my protection. That harming you would be the same as harming me. That's not a burden, Maya. It's armor." Before I could respond, a commotion near the entrance drew our attention. A man in an expensive suit was arguing with security, his voice rising despite their attempts to quiet him. Dante's entire body went rigid beside me. "Excuse me," he said, his voice cold and flat. "Stay here." But I couldn't just stand there. I followed at a distance, close enough to hear but far enough to not interfere. "Told you I'm on the list," the man was saying, his face flushed with anger or alcohol or both. "Do you know who I am?" "Mr. Volkov." Dante's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "This is a private event. You're not welcome here." Volkov. The name sparked recognition. I'd heard Dante mention it before in phone conversations he thought I wasn't listening to. A rival. An enemy. "Not welcome?" Volkov laughed, the sound ugly. "Since when do you control who attends hospital charity events, Romano?" "Since I'm the largest donor," Dante replied calmly. "Security. Escort Mr. Volkov out." "Not before I get a good look at your new pet," Volkov said, his eyes finding me across the room. There she is. Pretty little thing. Tell me, does she know what you really are? What you've done?" Dante moved between us so fast I barely tracked the motion. "You will not speak to her. You will not look at her. You will leave now, or I will have you removed in a manner that's far less dignified." "Threatening me publicly?" Volkov's smile was vicious. That's not like you, Dante. She must be important, which makes her interesting to me. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. Around us, conversations had stopped. People were watching, waiting. You should know, Dante said, his voice carrying just enough for nearby guests to hear. That threatening what's mine is the last mistake you'll make. Security. 4 men appeared, efficiently escorting a protesting Volkov from the ballroom, but the damage was done. Volkov knew about me now. Knew I was important to Dante. Knew exactly where to strike if he wanted to hurt the man who'd just humiliated him publicly. Dante returned to my side, his expression controlled but his eyes burning with barely suppressed rage. We're leaving. But now Maya. It wasn't a request. In the car, silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken words. Marco drove with his usual efficiency, while Dante stared out the window, his jaw clenched tight. I'm sorry, I finally said. His head whipped toward me. For what? For being a liability. Stop. He reached across the seat, taking my hand in his. You are not a liability. Volkov is a problem that's been building for months, long before you entered my life. Tonight was about him testing boundaries, seeing if he could provoke me in public. It has nothing to do with you. But he mentioned me, looked at me like you're something that can be used against me. Dante finished grimly. Yes, that's the reality of being close to me, Maya. I warned you about that. I know, I said quietly. But knowing theoretically and seeing it in action are different things. When we arrived back at the apartment, Maria had already put Lily to bed. We found her asleep in her room, one arm wrapped around the stuffed elephant Dante had bought her last month. She's safe here, Dante said quietly, both of us standing in the doorway watching her sleep. I've doubled security. Volkov won't get within a mile of this building. For how long? I asked, voicing the fear that had been building all night. How long do we live like this? How long before the danger finds us anyway? Dante turned to face me fully, something raw and vulnerable in his expression. I need to tell you something. About why I brought you to the gala tonight. About what you've become to me. My heart hammered against my ribs. Okay. He led me to the living room, poured himself a drink, and stood at the windows overlooking the lake. 3 months ago, I told you I wanted to protect you because you reminded me of my mother. That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. What's the whole truth? The whole truth is that from the moment I saw you wrapping up that bread, I felt something I'd never felt before. A need to protect, yes, but also. He paused, seeming to search for words. A recognition. Like my soul had been waiting for yours. Like everything in my life had been leading to that moment in that restaurant. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. I'm not a good man, Maya, he continued, still not looking at me. I've done terrible things. I'll do terrible things again if necessary to protect what's mine. But with you and Lily, I want to be better. I want to be the man you both deserve, even though I know I'll always fall short. Dante. I'm in love with you, he said, the words falling like stones into still water. I have been for months, and tonight, by bringing you to that gala, I made a public declaration of that fact to everyone in my world. You're not just under my protection. You're mine, in every way that matters, and I need to know if that's something you can accept. The silence stretched between us, heavy with the weight of his confession. My mind raced, trying to process what he'd just said, what it meant for me, for Lily, for the life we'd built in the safety of his protection. I don't know what to say, I finally whispered. Say what you feel, he replied, finally turning to face me. Not what you think you should feel, not what's safe or practical. Just the truth. I looked at this man, this dangerous, powerful, complicated man who'd walked into my desperate life and refused to let me drown, who'd protected my sister like she was his own, who'd learned sign language and attended school field trips and made sure we never went hungry or cold or afraid, who looked at me like I was precious, like I mattered, like loving me was both his salvation and his damnation. I'm scared, I admitted, of you, of this, of what it means to love someone who lives the way you do. And do you? His voice was rough. Love me? I don't know how not to, I confessed. You've become part of everything, part of my daily routine, part of Lily's happiness, part of the future I imagine when I let myself hope for more than just survival. But Dante, I'm terrified that loving you means losing myself, that I'll become someone dependent, someone who can't function without your protection. Then don't be that person, he said simply, crossing to me in 3 long strides. Be the fierce woman who yelled at a stranger to protect her sister. Be the stubborn woman who insists on keeping her jobs even though she doesn't need them. Be exactly who you are, and let me love you for it. His hands cupped my face, his touch gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. I don't want to change you, Maya. I don't want to cage you. I want to stand beside you, protect you when you need it, step back when you don't, and build a life where Lily has everything she deserves and you finally stop carrying the weight of the world alone. And if I say yes, I whispered, if I admit that I love you too, despite all the reasons I shouldn't, what happens then? Then everything changes, he said. You become not just someone I protect, but someone I build with. A partner, a future, a family. You and Lily become the center of my world, and I will burn down anyone who threatens that. Is that too much? Yes, I breathed. It's too much, too fast, too intense. But, he searched my eyes. But I can't imagine my life without you in it anymore, I admitted. Can't imagine Lily growing up without you. Can't imagine going back to the woman I was before, alone, exhausted, afraid. You've changed us, Dante, changed our world, and I think I want to change yours too. His smile was brilliant, transforming his face from severe to beautiful. You already have, Tesoro. From the moment you entered my life, everything changed. He kissed me then, and it was nothing like the brief kiss at the engagement party in the inspiration story. This was claiming and giving all at once, promise and passion, the collision of 2 people who'd been circling each other for months, finally allowing themselves to crash together. When we finally broke apart, breathless, his forehead resting against mine, he whispered, I need you to understand something. The danger is real. Volkov won't forget tonight. There will be others who see you as a way to hurt me. This life I'm offering comes with risks. I know, I said. But Dante? The life I had before came with risks too. Derek was escalating. I was drowning. At least with you, I'm not alone in facing the danger. No, he agreed. You'll never be alone again. I promise you that. A sound from the hallway made us both turn. Lily stood there in her pajamas, her hearing aids removed for sleep, watching us with wide, knowing eyes. I moved to her immediately, kneeling to sign. Did we wake you? No, she signed back. I had to use the bathroom. Are you and Dante together now? Like people who love each other? Leave it to a child to cut through complexity to the heart of things. Yes, I signed, glancing back at Dante, who watched us with softness in his expression. Is that okay with you? Lily's face split into a huge smile. Does this mean Dante is staying? Forever? If you'll have me, Dante said. And even though Lily couldn't hear him without her aids, she could read his lips. She launched herself at him, and he caught her easily. This dangerous man holding my sister with such gentle care that it made my heart ache. You have to promise to keep Maya safe. Lily signed seriously when he set her down. And me too. And to always read stories with the good voices, and to never leave like other people leave. I promise all of that, Dante said, signing along. On my honor, Lily. You and your sister are my family now. Forever. Okay then, Lily signed, satisfied with this arrangement in the way only children can be. I'm going back to bed. Maya, will you tuck me in? After Lily was settled and asleep again, I returned to find Dante still in the living room, staring at his phone with a frown. What is it? I asked. Security update. Volkov's made some calls since leaving the gala. He's planning something. Dante looked up at me, his expression serious. I need to handle this. Tomorrow, after the field trip, I'm going to need to take care of some business. Business you shouldn't be part of. The dangerous kind. Yes. I crossed to him, taking his hands in mine. Then do what you need to do. But come back to us, Dante. Promise me you'll come back. Always, he said fiercely. I've found what I want, Maya. I'm not letting it go. Not for Volkov. Not for anyone. That night, I lay in my bed, listening to the quiet sounds of the city below, and thought about the impossible turns my life had taken. 3 months ago, I'd been drowning. Now I was breathing, deeply and fully, for the first time in years. I loved a dangerous man, a man who could kill without remorse if necessary, a man whose world was built on violence and power and fear. But he was also the man who learned sign language for my sister, who doubled security without being asked, who looked at me like I hung the stars, who'd given us not just safety, but a life worth living. Tomorrow, he'd take Lily on her field trip. Tomorrow night, he'd face whatever threat Volkov represented. And I'd be here, waiting, hoping, trusting that the man who'd become my shelter wouldn't leave us to face the storm alone again. In the darkness, my phone lit up with a text. Sleep well, Tesoro. Tomorrow, everything becomes official. You, me, and Lily. A family. D. I smiled, typing back. We already are. Come home safe. His response was immediate. Always. You're my home now. Both of you. I fell asleep with those words warming me from the inside, unaware that tomorrow would bring not just a field trip and a surprise, but a confrontation that would test everything we'd built. That would force me to decide, once and for all, if I was strong enough to stand beside a man like Dante Romano. If I could be the partner he needed, not just the woman he protected. That would prove whether the fierce protective instincts that had made me yell at a stranger to stay away from my sister were strong enough to fight for a future I'd never imagined I deserved. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, for the first time in years, I was exactly where I belonged. The museum field trip started innocently enough. 20 excited 8-year-olds, 4 chaperones including Dante and me, and enough energy to power the entire city. Lily stayed close to Dante, her small hand tucked in his as they explored exhibits about dinosaurs and space and the human body. Watching them together made my chest ache with something too big to name. Dante Romano, one of Chicago's most feared men, patiently reading every placard in the exhibit, signing descriptions to Lily, lifting her up so she could see better, his expression soft with genuine affection. Your husband is wonderful with children, Mrs. Patterson, the teacher, commented as we watched Dante and Lily examine a T-Rex skeleton. He's not I started, then stopped. What was he? My protector? My boyfriend? The man I'd confessed to loving just last night? It's complicated. Mrs. Patterson smiled knowingly. The best things usually are. At lunch, while the children ate in the museum cafeteria, Dante pulled me aside. The surprise is ready. I've arranged for the class to have private access to the robotics lab after lunch. There's an engineer there who's deaf, and she's going to show the children how technology can overcome any limitation. My eyes stung with sudden tears. You did that for Lily? For all of them, he corrected. But yes, primarily for Lily. I want her to see that her deafness doesn't define what she can achieve. I love you, I said, the words escaping before I could stop them. Here in this public space surrounded by children and teachers, Dante's eyes darkened. Say that again. Later, when I can show you properly what it means to me. The robotics demonstration was a hit. Lily's face glowed with excitement as the deaf engineer, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, showed the children how she programmed robots using computer systems adapted for deaf users, how she'd overcome barriers, how technology and determination could open any door. Can I be an engineer? Lily signed to me afterwards, her eyes shining. You can be anything you want. I signed back. The whole world is open to you. Because Dante helped us, Lily signed matter-of-factly. Before, you were always worried. Now you're happy. It's better. Children saw too much, understood too much. We were loading the children back onto the bus when Dante's phone buzzed. I watched his expression shift from relaxed to alert in an instant. I need to take this, he said, stepping away. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could read his body language, the tension in his shoulders, the way his free hand clenched into a fist, the cold fury that settled over his features. When he returned, his expression was carefully neutral. Change of plans. Marco will take you and Lily home. I have business that can't wait. Volkov? Yes. His jaw tightened. He's made his move. I need to respond. Immediately. Fear clutched at my heart. Dante, I'll come back to you, he promised, pulling me close despite the bus full of children and watching teacher. I swear it, Maya, but I need to handle this now, before it gets worse. Be careful, I whispered against his chest. Always. He kissed the top of my head, then knelt to sign to Lily. I have to go to work, Piccola. But I'll see you soon, okay? And tonight, we'll read 3 chapters instead of 1. Promise? Lily signed. Promise, he confirmed. Watching him walk away felt like watching a storm approach, inevitable, dangerous, knowing that when it hit, nothing would be the same. Marco drove us home in silence, his usual friendly demeanor replaced by professional vigilance. At the apartment, I found 2 additional security guards in the hallway, men I didn't recognize but who nodded respectfully as we passed. Extra precaution, Marco explained, until Mr. Romano resolves the situation. Inside, I tried to focus on normalcy, helping Lily with homework, starting dinner, going through our evening routine, but my mind kept returning to Dante, to whatever confrontation he was walking into, to the very real possibility that he might not come back. At 8 p.m., Maria arrived unexpectedly. Mr. Romano asked me to stay with you tonight, she explained. Just in case. In case of what? I demanded, fear sharpening my voice. Maria's expression was sympathetic. In case he can't make it back tonight. In case you need someone here. He wants you to know you're not alone. After Lily was in bed, I paced the apartment, checking my phone obsessively, jumping at every sound. Maria watched me with patient understanding, eventually pressing a cup of tea into my hands. This is his world, she said gently. The waiting, the worry. Can you live with this, Mihija? Because it won't change. There will always be threats, always be nights like this. I don't know, I admitted, but I know I can't imagine my life without him. Is that enough? Only you can answer that. At 11 p.m., my phone finally rang Dante's number. Are you okay? I answered immediately. I'm fine. His voice was rough, exhausted. It's handled. Volkov won't be a problem anymore. What does that mean? It means he understands that you and Lily are off limits. It means I've made certain arrangements that ensure your safety. It means you can sleep without worry tonight. Are you coming home? A pause. Not tonight. I have some things to finish here. But tomorrow, Maya. Tomorrow I'll come home, and we'll talk about our future. About making this official, permanent. Official how? However you want, he said. Marriage, partnership, just naming me Lily's legal guardian alongside you, whatever makes you feel safe while still maintaining your independence. I'll give you whatever you need. All I need is for you to come back safe, I said. Then that's what I'll do. I love you, Tesoro. I love you too, I whispered. Come home to us. After we hung up, I sat in the darkened living room, looking out at the city lights and thinking about the choice I'd made. To love a dangerous man, to build a life in the shadow of violence, to trust that his protection was worth the risks it brought. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He can't protect you forever. Eventually he'll slip. And when he does, you'll learn what it really costs to love a man like Dante Romano. V. My blood ran cold. Volkov. He had my number, knew how to reach me. I immediately called Dante back. What's wrong? He answered on the first ring, immediately alert. I got a text. From Volkov. He's threatening. Forward it to me. Now. Dante's voice was ice. And Maya? Pack a bag. For you and Lily. You're moving to a different location tonight. Somewhere Volkov doesn't know about. But you said it was handled. I thought it was. He admitted, fury threading through his voice. But, clearly, he's more determined than I anticipated. This ends now. Tonight. I'm coming to get you. Dante. No. I'm not negotiating on this, Maya. You and Lily are the most important things in my world. I will not risk either of you to make a point about independence. Pack. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up before I could argue. Maria had heard my side of the conversation. I'll help you pack, she said, already moving toward the bedrooms. And I'll wake Lily gently. She'll be frightened, but better frightened and safe. 30 minutes later, I sat in another black SUV with a sleepy, confused Lily in my arms, watching our building disappear behind us. Dante was in the front passenger seat, Marco driving, and 2 more SUVs followed us in convoy. Where are we going? I asked. A property outside the city, Dante replied without turning around. Secure, isolated. You'll stay there until I've eliminated the threat completely. For how long? However long it takes. Now he did turn, his eyes meeting mine in the darkness. I won't apologize for keeping you safe, Maya. That's not negotiable. And my jobs? Lily's school? Remote work? Remote learning? He said. I've already made arrangements. Anger flared through my fear. You're making decisions for us without consulting me. Yes, he agreed. Because right now, keeping you alive is more important than respecting your independence. When the threat is gone, we'll return to our partnership. But tonight, you follow my rules. The property was a sprawling estate, an hour outside Chicago, surrounded by high walls and sophisticated security systems. Inside, it was both luxurious and fortified windows with bulletproof glass, panic rooms on every floor, guards stationed at every entrance. This is a prison, I said as Dante showed us to our rooms. This is a fortress, he corrected. And temporary. As soon as it's safe, as soon as you've done whatever violent thing you're planning, I interrupted. As soon as you've hurt or killed or threatened whoever needs to be hurt or killed or threatened, let's be honest about what you mean by safe. Dante was quiet for a long moment. Yes, he finally said. That's exactly what I mean. Does that horrify you? Yes, I admitted. And no, because I understand that in your world, mercy is seen as weakness. That the only way to protect what's yours is to be more dangerous than anyone who might threaten it. But Dante, I need you to understand that if you die doing this, if you sacrifice yourself to keep us safe, you'll be taking yourself away from us. And that's not protection. That's just another kind of loss. He crossed to me, cupping my face in his hands. I'm not going to die, he said with absolute certainty. I've finally found what I want to live for. I'm not giving that up for anything. Not for Volkov. Not for anyone. Promise me, I demanded. Promise me you'll come back. I promise, he said, sealing it with a kiss that tasted like goodbye and forever, all at once. After Dante left, and he did leave, disappearing into the night with Marco and a team of his most trusted men, I sat in the too quiet mansion, holding Lily as she finally slept, and wondered if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. Loving Dante meant accepting this. The danger, the violence, the nights of not knowing if he'd come home. It meant teaching Lily that sometimes the people we loved did terrible things for good reasons. It meant compromising every value I'd thought I held dear. But it also meant never being hungry again. Never being cold or afraid or alone. It meant Lily had a future full of possibilities. It meant having someone who loved us enough to burn down the world to keep us safe. Was that trade worth it? I didn't know. But I knew that when dawn came, I'd be standing at the window, watching for his return. Knowing that whether or not I could accept his world, I was already irrevocably part of it. The fierce, protective woman who'd yelled at a stranger had fallen in love with a monster. And the monster had proven he had a heart after all. Now we just had to survive long enough to see if that was enough. Dawn broke over the estate in shades of gold and pink, beautiful and indifferent to the violence that had unfolded in Chicago's shadows through the night. I stood at the window where I'd kept vigil for hours, Lily still sleeping peacefully in the bed behind me, unaware that our entire future hung in the balance. My phone had remained silent. No calls, no texts, no updates. Just the suffocating quiet of waiting. Then, at 6:47 a.m., I heard the distant rumble of vehicles approaching. My heart seized as I watched 3 black SUVs wind up the long driveway, moving slower than they had when we'd arrived. Were they bringing news? Or bringing him back? I was at the front door before the first vehicle stopped, Maria appearing beside me to hold me back. Wait, she cautioned. Let them come to us. The rear door of the first SUV opened, and Dante emerged. He was alive, whole, moving under his own power. Relief hit me so hard my knees buckled, Maria's arm around my waist, the only thing keeping me upright. But something was different. Blood stained his white shirt, though I couldn't tell if it was his. His knuckles were split and bruised, and his eyes carried the weight of whatever he'd done through the night. He climbed the steps slowly, his gaze locked on mine. It's done, he said simply. Volkov won't threaten you again. No one will. Are you hurt? I asked, my hands already reaching for him, needing to confirm he was real and whole. Not seriously. He caught my hands, holding them against his chest, where I could feel his heart beating steady and strong. Some bruises, Nothing more. The blood isn't mine. I should have been repulsed. Should have pulled away from this man who'd clearly enacted violence in my name. Instead, I stepped closer, wrapping my arms around him, feeling him sag slightly against me as exhaustion caught up with adrenaline. You came back, I whispered against his chest. I promised I would. His arms came around me, holding tight. I will always come back to you, Maya. Always. Behind us, I heard Lily's small voice. Dante? He released me immediately, turning to see Lily standing in the doorway in her pajamas, her hearing aids already in place, looking small and worried. I'm okay, Piccola, he said, signing as he spoke. I promised I'd come back for those 3 chapters, remember? Lily studied him with the unnerving perception of children, taking in the blood and bruises, the exhaustion in his face. Then she crossed to him and wrapped her arms around his waist, holding on tight. You keep your promises, she signed when she stepped back. That's good. Because Maya cried last night when she thought I was asleep. I don't want her to cry anymore. Something broke in Dante's expression. He looked at me, at the evidence of tears I hadn't realized were visible, and I saw him make a decision. Come inside, he said to both of us. There are things we need to discuss. About the future. About what happens now. In the estate's comfortable living room, with morning light streaming through bulletproof windows, Dante explained what had transpired. He was careful with his words, mindful of Lily's presence, but the truth was clear enough. Volkov attempted to kidnap someone close to me, Dante said, to use as leverage. He failed, and in failing, he broke rules that govern how our world operates. The other families agreed he'd gone too far. He's been removed from power. His organization disbanded. The threat is gone. Removed from power, I repeated, understanding the euphemism. You killed him. Dante's eyes held mine. I protected my family, by any means necessary. Lily was watching this exchange, her sharp mind processing what we weren't saying. Directly, did you hurt bad people? She signed to Dante. To keep us safe? Yes, he signed back, not lying to her. Sometimes protecting the people we love means doing hard things, things that aren't nice. But I only hurt people who tried to hurt my family first. Like when Maya yelled at that man for getting too close to me. Lily signed thoughtfully. She was scary then, but it was because she was protecting me. Exactly like that, Dante confirmed. Okay. Lily signed with the easy acceptance of childhood. Can we go home now? I miss my room. And my books. Dante looked at me, the question clear in his eyes. Yes, I said, making my choice. We can go home now. The return to the Gold Coast apartment felt different somehow. Same beautiful space, same comfortable furniture, same view of the lake. But everything had shifted. We'd crossed a threshold there was no coming back from. While Maria helped Lily settle back into her routine, Dante and I stood on the balcony, the morning sun warming the cold March air. I need to know if you can live with this, Dante said quietly. With who I am, what I do. Last night wasn't an anomaly, Maya. Threats will arise. I'll handle them. That's the reality of my world. Our world, I corrected. That's what you said I am now. Part of your world. Part of your family. Yes, he confirmed, but only if you choose it, fully, with open eyes about what it means. I thought about the girl I'd been 3 months ago, desperate, exhausted, barely surviving. I thought about the woman I was now safe, provided for, loved, and I thought about the cost of that transformation. I'm not naive enough to think love is simple, I said finally. Or that accepting your protection means accepting perfection. You're a complicated man, Dante Romano. You've built an empire on violence and fear. You've done things I'll never fully know about or understand. But you've also given me and Lily a life we never could have had otherwise. You've loved us fiercely and protected us completely. So yes, I can live with this. I can live with you. Relief flooded his features. There's something I want to give you, he said, reaching into his pocket. Something I've been carrying for weeks, waiting for the right moment. He pulled out a small velvet box. Inside were 2 rings, one unmistakably an engagement ring with a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds, the other a simple platinum band. I'm not asking you to marry me, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Not yet. Not until you're absolutely certain this is what you want. But I'm asking you to consider a future with me, a permanent one, where we build something real from what started as necessity, where Lily has a father who will protect her and support her dreams, where you have a partner who will stand beside you, not just behind you providing resources. I looked at the rings, at the physical symbol of what he was offering, not just protection or financial security, but partnership, family, love. Can I tell you what I want? I asked. Anything. I want Lily to grow up seeing a man who keeps his promises, who shows her that strength doesn't mean violence unless necessary, who proves that love is action, not just words. I met his eyes. I want to finish my nursing degree, to have a career that's mine, separate from your world. I want independence even within our partnership. Done, he said immediately. I want honesty between us, always, even when the truth is ugly or complicated. I can do that. And I want time, I said. Not forever. Just enough to be certain that this is choice, not circumstance. That I'm saying yes because I want you, not because I need you. Dante nodded slowly. How much time? 6 months, I said. 6 months of living this life, seeing how it fits. And then, if we're both still certain, ask me again. 6 months, he agreed. And Maya, I'll spend every day of those 6 months proving that I'm worth choosing. He closed the ring box, tucking it back into his pocket. But before he could move away, I stopped him. Dante, I don't need 6 months to know I love you. I just need 6 months to know I can be myself while loving you. Do you understand the difference? Yes, he said, pulling me close. And I'll prove every day that you can be both mine and entirely your own. 6 months passed in a rhythm of ordinary magic and extraordinary moments. Lily thrived her hearing aids, allowing her to engage more fully with the world, her confidence growing with each achievement. The deaf engineer, Dr. Chen, became a mentor, visiting twice a month to encourage Lily's interest in robotics and technology. I enrolled in an online nursing program, studying in the mornings while Lily was at school, my education funded by Dante but pursued on my own terms. The work was challenging, rewarding, entirely mine. Dante kept his promise about honesty. He never hid the nature of his business, but he kept the violence separate from our home. I learned to navigate his world attending charity galas, meeting his associates, understanding the complex web of alliances and territories that governed Chicago's underworld. But I also maintained my own identity. I kept my job at the medical billing company, despite Dante's gentle protests. I made friends other mothers from Lily's school, classmates from my online program, people who knew me as Maya Torres, not as Dante Romano's woman. And slowly, the fear that had driven me for years transformed into something else. Not complacency. I never forgot the danger inherent in loving Dante, but acceptance, understanding that safety was never absolute, that loving anyone meant accepting risk. You've changed, Maria observed one evening as we prepared dinner together, Lily and Dante in the living room playing chess. How so? You smile more, laugh more. You've stopped looking over your shoulder every moment. You've found peace, me. Hija. She was right. I had found peace. Not the absence of danger, but the presence of something worth risking danger for. On the 6-month anniversary of that first day when I'd yelled at a stranger to stay away from my sister, Dante took us to Navy Pier. It was a perfect Chicago autumn day, crisp air, brilliant sunshine, the lake sparkling like scattered diamonds. Lily ran ahead to watch the boats, giving us a moment of privacy on the pier. 6 months, Dante said, his hand finding mine. Have you decided? I thought about everything we'd built, the life we'd created, the family we'd become. I thought about Lily's laughter, about my studies, about the future stretching before us full of possibility. Yes, I said simply. I've decided. He pulled out the ring box, hand steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. Maya Torres, will you marry me? Will you let me be your partner, Lily's father, your family in all the ways that matter? Will you trust me with your future? Yes, I said, tears streaming down my face. Yes to all of it. To you, to us, to the life we're building. Yes. He slid the ring onto my finger, the emerald catching the sunlight, throwing green fire across the water. Then he kissed me, and it tasted like promise and possibility and forever. Maya, Dante, Lily's voice called, and we turned to see her running back, her face alight with joy. There's a boat with dolphins. Come see. Dante lifted her onto his shoulders, and we walked down the pier like any other family on a beautiful afternoon. But we weren't any other family. We were something forged from desperation and danger, from fierce protection and fiercer love. I was the woman who'd yelled at a stranger, not knowing he was a mafia boss who would change everything, who would give us not just safety, but a life worth living, who would prove that monsters could have hearts and that love could flourish even in the darkest soil. The mafia boss had never let us go, but I'd discovered something more important I didn't want him to, because somewhere between protection and partnership, between fear and love, I'd found home, not in a place, but in a person. In two people, the dangerous man who'd claimed us, and the little girl who'd given me purpose long before either of us knew we'd find family in the most unexpected place. As we stood at the pier's edge, Lily pointing excitedly at dolphins that might or might not be there, Dante's arm around my waist, his ring on my finger, I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago. Desperate, alone, barely surviving. She'd be amazed to see us now, thriving, together, building something real from what had started as necessity. "What are you thinking?" Dante murmured against my ear. "That I'm glad I yelled at you," I said, smiling. "That day, when you got too close to Lily. I'm glad I was fierce and protective and had no idea who you were." "So am I," he replied. "Because that fierceness is what made me fall in love with you. That's what I want our children to have, your fire and my protection." "Our children?" I repeated, heart skipping. "Eventually," he said, his smile slow and warm. "If you want. A family we choose. Not one circumstance is forced on us." I looked at Lily, at this beautiful girl who'd given my life meaning. At Dante, this complicated man who'd given us both a future. At the city spread before us, no longer a place of struggle but a place of home. "Yes," I said again, the word that had changed everything 6 months ago, now changing it again. "Yes, to all of it. To family, to future, to you." Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.